don't see on regular TV. From another perspective, something relative to your needs. And we gonna have deep subjects, and we gonna turn the lens. And there's no topic we won't skip, so please don't miss weekly, yeah. Tune weekly to check in, weekly check-in, weekly check-in, weekly check-in, tune in to weekly, check-in, weekly check-in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Happy New Year, y'all. Is it happy? I don't know.
Happy New Year. It is for me.
Okay, all
Sit
right.
back with my popcorn. Like.
Okay. That's good to know. Well, today we have two people on our first official weekly check-in. Today we have Dr. Sharice Janae Nelson. How you doing, Sharice?
Doing all right, y'all. The year has opened up a little bit sad for me. Our music minister at church after service on Sunday led service and dropped dead afterwards. So
What?
It has been,
Wow.
it has been an emotional. It's been an emotional start. As you know, Kaya, I'm a political science professor, so this level of insurrection that we're seeing at the Capitol it was orchestrated, let's be clear, but has been frustrating. So it has it's been an emotional start. Not necessarily bad or good, just emotional.
Okay. Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that. Dame Crawford, what it do? What's up?
Hey, how you doing? I'm pretty good. Just enjoying the beginning of the year so far and trying to stay safe out here as California has become hot in these COVID streets. So
Right.
trying to be extra careful, especially because, you know, I do a lot and take care of my parents a lot. So I want to make sure we don't bring nothing to them, and just want to spread the word to tell people, even if you don't believe in COVID, believe in it for the people around you. Even if, you know, because if you're right and you still take your precautions, nothing happens. If you're wrong and you don't take those precautions, you can hurt someone. So just, you know, try to be a little less selfish in that regard.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Hopefully we will be able to talk about COVID and why is COVID so hot, specifically in Los Angeles County. But we have a very tight show and I want to get on the important topics. So before I get into the cray, let's talk about Georgia. Let's talk about these Senate runoffs, all right? And how Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff pulled it off. Or I should say the Georgians pulled it off and put them in to become officially the next U.S. senators. What are your thoughts on that?
Now, I told you, didn't I?
You did.
Didn't we have this conversation?
You did.
I told you back in November.
I
told you it was going to happen. And the reason it was going to happen is that the numbers don't lie, right? How the song go, men lie, women lie, numbers don't lie.
Right.
The numbers don't lie. And what we saw, and I guess also let me say this too. I was on the ground. So all summer I spent in Atlanta. My sister lives in a suburb of Atlanta in Rex. It's in between Henry County and Clayton County. So I spent the summer there. So I saw the fervor there during the summer on the ground. And then this second time around, for the runoff, my son and I were there for Christmas. When I flew in, or when I was in the area in Columbus, I did 1 day of door knocking. So, y'all, that door did not stop knocking. I was at my sister's house for 2 weeks. The only day they did not knock on that door was Christmas Day.
Wow.
Okay, they knocked on that door every day to make sure those folks were out, and so I knew it was possible. I knew, and I said this. I think Kaya, you have me on record saying this, that the Warnock race was going to be the easier race, and that the John Ossoff race was going to be tight because of the idea that Purdue has a name, has a political name, has been in the political sphere. My sister was the one who helped me to make the connection that Purdue chicken is from his
Right.
family, right?
Yeah.
And so he had this name recognition that Ossoff didn't have. Ossoff has an awkward name, right? Like a Barack Obama type of awkward name, right? Because he's a Jew, and so that's difficult as far as political messaging and communication is concerned. But what happened is Black women. So let's be very clear about what happened.
Right? And you want to say particularly we're talking about in the South. We're on the East Coast, Northeast. That'll be, you have Polish names and everything. So that's a good point.
That's a very good distinction. Ossoff is I wouldn't say weird, but Ossoff is not a politically expedient name in the South, right? Because of the idea of Jackson, Williams, all of these Anglo-Saxon names that have prevailed in the South due to enslavement and due to white supremacy that's there. So yes, that's a very good indicator. But if you want to know the story in Georgia, Black women from the beginning to the end. That's the story in Georgia. Black women told them. Black women organized, and they organized around Stacey Abrams, but there were several other Black women that were in that fight and did that work.
That's a really good point. I also wanted to just add in terms of the Anglicization of the South. My family in Louisiana experienced that because they had a lot of, what we would call Latin American names, specifically more so French, maybe some Spanish. And so at the time where there was census in the early 1900s, these census takers would go down to the South and literally change people's names on the census, right, to make it a more, Anglo America. So that's an excellent point. But Black women came through. People have been talking about Stacey Abrams, but now what we're finding out is that there are more women, such as yourself as well, that were pushing and pulling this mighty mothership in order to get people to vote. Dame, could you talk about that?
Yeah, I would like to say I really think Stacey Abrams has been a superhero for the Democratic Party. She has saved their butts a lot. I was telling somebody, I said, I think they would have been better off just leaving her alone, letting her win her race. You know what I mean? Because now it's come back to bite them, and it's going to continue to bite them. But I also feel like Stacey, her coalition, even Tamika Mallory, some of the other people were down there. They have showed the blueprint to the DNC of how to win Southern states, because Mississippi has more Black people than I think any Southern state down there, and they can't seem to get people out to vote in the win. So they have the blueprint now of how to flip some of these states. And these are states that already have the demographics, not the places like Texas where we see the demographic change, in places like Arizona, even Atlanta, where, a couple of friends of mine said, well, a lot of Black people are moving to Georgia and we bringing our politics with us. So that's one of the reasons you were able to see, some of those places flip. But there are places like Mississippi and Alabama where there's a lot of Black people who are just disenfranchised, don't vote, or not educated on the process yet. So I feel like if the Democratic Party wants to be smart, they will take this blueprint, continue this blueprint. But the only way that this blueprint will continue to work, too, is if the people that they put in office do the things that they promised to Black people. And that's going to be the next issue that we're going to see, is how that happens, how they reconcile, knowing that we are the ones who have been the backbone of helping this party win, more specifically in this election, not just Ossoff and Warnock, but also even the president-elect and Kamala Harris. That was because of Black people coming out. It's so funny, you would see when you watching those states flip, you would see they're waiting on places to come in that are Black people. They waiting on Atlanta to come in. They waiting on Savannah to come in. They were waiting on Wisconsin to come in. They waiting on Detroit to come in. Like, it's all the places they wait. It was us. So it was clear that it was us. So I feel like they have the blueprint.
Dave, I want to make a point. We were waiting on those areas because they structurally defunded those areas as far as carrying out elections. That's why we are waiting. And that to me, I think, is a point that needs to be highlighted, is that without the protections of the Civil Rights Act of 1965, you do not have a federal check on state elections, especially in places where they're trying to disenfranchise Black and brown voters. It's extremely dangerous. Why does it take DeKalb so long to count their votes?
I was about to say that.
Why does it take DeKalb so long to count the votes? Why is Clayton County struggling? Because there is no federal check on the state of Georgia. We already know what Brian Kemp was up to. He sat in the Secretary of State's position as he ran against Stacey Abrams. He effectively ran the election that he was the winner of. So I want to make this very clear, because I think people are not getting the piece of it, is that The reason you're waiting on our counties is designed that way. It's designed so that you could be waiting on our counties, and you are waiting on our counties so that they can then, in many ways, and so they can in many ways disenfranchise those voters in those areas, because it causes suspicion on those areas because of the wait. That is a game. That's a tactic, and it's been being used. Like you said, it was used in Detroit. It was used in Pennsylvania. When you're talking about Philadelphia, it was used in Wisconsin. When you're talking about Michigan, when you're talking about Detroit, it was used in Chicago in some ways. When you're talking about Illinois, it was used in Atlanta. This is now the new tactic, which is why when Biden and Harris are inaugurated on January 20th, one of the first orders of business needs to then be the John Lewis Civil Rights Act of 1965.
Right, but let me add to that as well. Another issue that came up was Postmaster General Louis DeJoy, and how he basically weakened severely the U.S. Post system.
Yep.
So what we're seeing is a confluence of multiple things that were put in place to undermine the elections, and we still came through. I think one of the things that America learned is hell hath no fury like a black woman scorned.
That
right? Part. You know what I'm saying? All right. And and I think also another thing is that we saw an emergence of new faces in the Democratic Party. And I want to add is that there's been a lot of kind of back and forth in terms of progressive, moderate, Dems. I think we are starting to see, and we talked about this in the last weekly check-in, of flexibility that's needed in the Democratic Party in order to include and fit like these different people that are emerging. Also, gotta big up the rural Black Georgia that came through as well, and they came through hard, which is connected to Stacey Abrams and the collective of women as well that did the work. So I have a question: who do you think, like out of all of the elections, and not just Georgia, who do you think has been emerging as voices that we haven't seen that are pushing progress forward?
As far as on the ground, or are you talking about from a legislative?
It could be either or, legislative or grassroots.
Latoya Brown is someone that I think is not getting enough shine and not getting enough conversation about.
Who's that?
Melanie, what's Melanie's last name? She's the executive director for the Black Women's Leadership Roundtable. Melanie Latoya runs, I think Black Vote is the name of the organization that she runs. Is that these on the ground? I think these women have built Melanie and Latoya. I may get the names of their organizations incorrect, but I'm almost positive that Melanie's nonprofit is the Black Women Leadership Roundtable. Mm-hmm. But they've been putting in the work. Right. And so the reason that Stacey was able to grab this coalition is that we have seen, in my opinion, a reemergence of Black civic organizations. And okay. I argue this in the Congressional Black Caucus book that I wrote, that one of the biggest reasons that Black legislators have lost their way is that they don't have the Black civic organizations holding their feet to the fire and holding them accountable. And one of those reasons is some of the organizations are older, and they've organized themselves in a way that younger people are not as excited about joining them. But the bigger thing is, and this is the thing that I don't think that we like to talk about, is we as a people have lost faith in those types of institutions. One of the biggest things that I think is dangerous in this moment for Black people is to remember is that white people have more power when they're individuals. We have more power when we are a collective, and we are a collective people. That is how that's in our culture. That's African culture. It's who we are. We're a collective people. It's when we start buying into this idea that we do better by ourselves, or we do better individually without some level of institution, that we then drink their Kool-Aid and try to fight their fight in the way that we will never win. We fight when we're together. I'm not saying we're going to agree on everything, but we fight better when we are in a coalition and we understand what the overall objectives are. And that to me is what I'm seeing, is that on the ground, Black people are getting more engaged in Black civic organizations that can then put pressure on legislators regardless of their color.
Dang.
Agreed. I agree with everything she said. She just laid it out. But and as far as some of the elected officials, I think Ossoff is going to be one of those progressive voices. And again, that goes to what the doctor was saying though. You had Ossoff and Warnock meeting with people like Killer Mike and people who were like and Keisha Lance Bottoms, and who they're like, we want to talk to you. We're going to help you get in, but we want to send you to Washington with our agenda. And I think that's been a big piece of what's been missing, more specifically, even with us and our representatives in California. We have let our representatives get way too complacent. We have let our representatives get way too chill without us putting their feet to the fire. Like Maxine Waters has been skating for a very, very, very long time. And I think the same thing that they did in Atlanta and in Georgia is what we as Black people are going to have to do, as the doctor said, as far as getting coalitions together and making sure we the ones who are pushing our progressive issues and pushing our own specific agendas, because that's the only way that is going to happen. It's going to get heard, because you see some of the picks that Joe Biden has been making. He's still staying very moderate on some of his cabinet picks and damn near conservative. So
who, Dave? Who's conservative? Who would you consider conservative?
Merrick Garland is going to be the Attorney General.
Yeah, and let me tell you why he chose Merrick Garland. It is.
But is he conservative or not? Do you think he's conservative or not?
No, he's definitely middle of the road. I would consider him moderate, but I wouldn't consider him conservative. But it was a chess move. So if I take Merrick Garland out of the D.C. Superior Court, that automatically leaves a seat for this Black woman that's coming up in the ranks. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I'm going to make these senators give this man a hearing. Because if you remember, Merrick Garland, to make sure that he didn't get on the Supreme Court, they didn't even give him a hearing, and because they knew if they gave him a hearing, there was no way that they weren't going to be able to confirm him. Right. So this is Joe's also way of forcing them to give him a hearing. The third thing that people, I think, forget about his history is that Merrick Garland was the lead on prosecuting Timothy McVeigh in the Oklahoma bombing. So the other thing that Joe understands is that we have a problem, and the Department of Justice, the Department of Homeland Security have all said that white terrorism is the biggest national security threat, right? And now I appoint a white man that understands that mentality and understands how to prosecute them successfully. Because what often happens with other type of prosecutors, especially us of color, get emotional, get excited. We have to remember to be tacticians in those positions. Merrick Garland is going to be able to do that, and he understands how to hold them to the letter of the law that's already there, and no one's going to second guess it. No one's going to say that it's not legitimate because he's a white man. So for me, it was a strategic play. Is he a moderate? Yes. Where I have concerns about Garland are with the police. Right, his decisions that he has made. If you look at his record on policing,
well, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. So for me, I understand the chess move of opening up that seat. I didn't think about the strategy of making sure he get his hearing, but I did understand the chess move of opening up that judicial seat. But my issue was not my issue, but what I hoped was that we would get an AG that had more of a civil rights background.
But you're going to get Sally Yates, who's going to lead the Civil Rights Division. And what he's doing is, and it's already been named, what he's doing is he's providing her cover. Because now I don't have to. And then the next thing about Garland, and when we talk about his record with policing, if we look at most of his decisions have been with police in the DC area that are majority Black. If you look at his decisions or things or any level of things that he's adjudicated over when it comes to police that are in majority white areas, he's far more favorable. So to me, it was, how do I legitimize the Department of Justice? How do I seek out these Trump sycophants. Because if you get somebody that's civil rights on their forehead, the secret Trumpers are just going to go further underground in that DOJ. Whereas if I get someone that's moderate, middle of the road, you and I both know, Dane, white folks say other stuff to other white folks that they ain't going to say to us, right?
Yes,
And
true,
so if
very
I
true.
do that, then I can better identify who's in here. Because trust me, once in 2 weeks, once this thing turns over, all of these Trumpites are going to go further underground, and it's going to be difficult to even figure out who they are anymore.
Well, if people haven't been taking notes of who they are, then boo-boo on them. But I'm going to tell you who is an issue. Tom Vilsack for USDA. Black farmers are like, F this dude. This dude salted us out before, fired Shirley Sherrod. We have a problem. And also, and his name escapes me, but it is the black man who is military who worked for Blackwater with the appointment. And also,
the first black man to lead the Department of Justice. The Department of Defense.
Okay. So, and I apologize, his name escapes me. And then, but also it's going to be very interesting to see how the Biden administration, because the criticism is that it's a very corporate, a lot of it is a very kind of corporate type of appointees or corporate friendly appointees, and wondering if that will translate, to truly helping the people. But in politics, you always have got to apply the pressure. You can never just sit back and expect them to do what's best for the people. So that's the two-way street. I wanted to also go back. You said something really interesting in terms of the people have lost faith in civic organizations. I think that people lost faith in civic organizations once civic organizations began to elevate their leaders into some type of cult status without any accountability, and the resources began to stop trickling down into the community. And a lot of civic organizations just began to, decrease anyway. When a lot of the leaders who were considered the leaders of the organization died or got sick, and they didn't properly mentor somebody and pass it on. So I think it's also something that we've got to acknowledge. But I want to, because I know you got to go in about 23 minutes. What had happened in DC, right? Right. So, this is the day after what they're calling the Capitol siege or the Capitol takeover. They're using all these words. I'm saying it was the give up. You know what I'm saying? It was the banana in the tailpipe. But that's me. But you are in DC. Tell me from your perspective what's going on, and then Dame, I want you to talk about the security failures that you saw. All right, Sharif, take it away.
It was an insurrection. That's what it was. It was an insurrection. It was an attempted coup. And what the objective was, and I want to be very clear about this, the objective was to get a hold of those signed ballots. The objective was to cause enough chaos to get their hands on those ballots, because what people have to understand is that the ballots from those states are then what then certifies the election. And so these objections about what happens in each of these states would have been far more valid had they not actually had the physical papers from each of the states that the secretaries of states of each of those states had signed. So that's the first thing. And because that was the objective, that is why there wasn't the correct amount of security. It was all orchestrated. Muriel Bowser is the mayor of Washington, D.C. She has authority on the streets of D.C. The Capitol, the National Mall, the monuments are all federal. It's all under federal jurisdiction. When you are under federal jurisdiction, you can get the National Guard to come out, but the National Guard has to then be called or controlled by the Pentagon. Who controls it at this moment? Trump does, which is why in the Black Lives Matter protest, you saw National Guardsmen on the steps of the Capitol. But when you are talking about these Trump sycophants, you did not see the National Guard on the steps, and you didn't see them there because it would have required the federal government to call them to be there, and Trump specifically did not. And if we think about it even further, Trump did not even call them at that point. Who called them actually was Mike Pence. Mike Pence was the one who issued the order to then have them. And it's actually called an Article 10 because when it's an Article 32, it means the state has called in for the National Guard versus the 10. Well, the 32 was called by Muriel Bowser when she called Virginia. So Muriel Bowser, the Black woman, did everything in her power to try to tamp this down. But because DC is not a state and they do not have the ability as a state to then call in the National Guard, she had to call next door to Virginia to try to get them and the National Guard to come in. And that's why when folks are talking about the curfew at 6 p.m., the curfew had everything to do with DC streets. The National Mall is in federal territory. It is not underneath then the jurisdiction. So it's all of these federal nuances that Trump understood and played on and got white folks to, and he gave us the playbook. We already knew it was coming. Many of us didn't think it was going to happen on the 6th. Many of us thought it was going to happen on January 20th, right? So none of us, I think, are surprised, but it was orchestrated to look as bad as it did purposefully. This was all done purposefully, and this was an insurrection. This is treason, and anybody who's been arrested should then be charged as a treason with treason.
So that's a really good segue. I mean, a lot of people, there's still a lot of intel or information that needs to come out in terms of the series of events and how it all played out. One of the questions is that there has been intelligence and information that was given that something like this would happen. And even though people expected or suspected that it might happen around the inauguration, this was still considered a high security event. You have the vice president in the Capitol building, right? And so what I, in terms of what it is I understand is that even though Mayor Bowser only has the capability to do what she can do in terms of in the DC jurisdiction, there could have been more law enforcement and backup. So who and how that is going to happen, I think we'll find out more. But what are some of the security failures that became glaringly visible in this, Dane?
Do we want to call them failures though?
That part.
Do we want to call them failures when
What we gonna call it? What we gonna call it?
Listen. It's hard to do security if you Hannah Montana. It's hard to do security if you Hannah Montana and Miley Cyrus. Okay. The reason that I'm just saying a lot of those people were the same people. It's the same tribe. The reason, like how she said they were in front of the Capitol building when Black Lives Matter were protesting and not even trying to take over the Capitol building. Meanwhile, anybody with any kind of common sense knew what was coming just by watching Trump's speech. Even if you take out all the other stuff that the doctor told us about, you know, the plans of insurrection, all that. If you just took a basic common sense approach and watch what that man was saying, because I posted on my Facebook, I said, yo, this rant is wild. I could literally see him riling them up. And the things he was saying was specific, like, the only thing that's going to stop this is if y'all go and stop Pence. The only thing that's going to stop this is if y'all go down to the Capitol and tell them we won't take it. The only thing, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is very specific and very orchestrated. He actually should be charged with treason, but I know that's a whole other conversation. Well, but if you watch footage, you've seen footage of the barricades being moved for them to come in.
You know that's what I was about to say. Yeah,
you seen footage.
There's no way. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I worked on the Hill. And there is no way you couldn't even get near the Capitol lawn without proper
especially somewhere where the vice president is. Like, come on.
Kaya, I did research up there on my dissertation. Child, you would have thought I was coming in there. I came in there with a laptop and some books to do some research. Do you understand the way they patted me down? Check my braids, look through the bag. Child, did you forget where girl, to go and look at a book, I got damn near strip search. So this is just absolutely foolishness. But it was orchestrated foolishness. That's what I want people to understand. This was all intentional. This was not unintentional. This was all intentional. Right. And that's the thing I want people to understand. Look, to Dame's point, can we call it a failure? No, it wasn't a failure. It was orchestrated.
Yeah.
Right. It was a bad Tyler Perry Nollywood movie.
It
was some bad acting up in there.
No, it was so bad.
I've seen some clips like I cannot believe it. And then the thing is that how riled up people who were watching were. And I'm like, yo, I was like, let me not get all, turned up, but this is fake.
I wasn't turned up. I was just like,
Right, and
Watching
let me
them,
not
watching
say
them
this
eat.
to say because I don't want to let me correct myself in that it was manufactured. Of course, there were people in the crowd who
Yeah,
legitimately thought that they were about to do some revolutionary type stuff.
and which they said
So
we are here. There was a young white woman who got maced and who was so appalled that she got maced.
right,
And
right,
she was like, I was here for the revolution.
right,
Like they literally thought they were leading the revolution on Trump's orders because he told them to stand back and stand by. And this day
right.
was him giving them their specific marching orders. He knew exactly what he was doing. And the people in the Capitol, like, to Sharif's point, they knew what they were doing because if you knew that he was down the street rallying these people up, even if you didn't think the day before, wouldn't you be saying he's telling people to come to the, you know what I'm saying? He's telling people to
Right.
come to the Capitol after this. We need to shore up the security. We need to shore up the perimeter, especially when you have a one-to-one comparison. When we saw how they were when Black Lives Matter were protesting, when we saw how they were rank and file on those steps to make sure nobody got in. But also, this is not the first time that they've let a bunch of white people into the Capitol building. We saw it happen in Portland. We saw it happen 3 times in Michigan. Nothing. They came to Michigan with guns. Nothing. Nothing. So,
Point.
so this is like, this was the tip of the iceberg for that and for them. But I think what they did was they showed terrorists how to get to the Capitol. Like they literally gave them the movie playbook of how to get to the Capitol. And they also has shown because like somebody's going to be the fall guy because they're already talking about firing the police chief from the Capitol Police, so like they're trying to make somebody the fall guy. But I'm like, it's much bigger than that because as Dr. Sharif said, if the vice president is somewhere, there's no way they should have been able to get that close, period.
Right.
And let's also be clear though, because this is the other reason why the firing of the Capitol Police is absolute BS. Because to your point, Kaya, they knew that this was possible, which is why senators and House members asked for private details. That's another reason why the Capitol Police weren't outside. They were with the senators and the House representatives. That's why none of them were dead. That's why because they asked for details. That's what the Capitol Police is for. The Capitol Police is for providing, they're not really used to then secure a perimeter. That's not really their role. They can be used for such, but they're such a small force. You use your other federal resources to do that. And what Trump did was he hamstrung the other federal resources to make it look chaotic. So to Dave's point, to call the chief of police of the Capitol Police the fall guy is BS because each of those senators, and there's a ranking because every House member can't get a detail. There's a ranking for who gets the detail, who gets it first, second, third, etc. Which is why old girl got shot when she tried to get into the chamber. You saw when they tried to get in the chamber, folks was there at the door. Who were they? That was Secret Service and that was Capitol Police because details were asked for. Each of those offices asked for details. So this whole hammering against the Capitol Police, we could talk about the Trump loyalists that were in the group that from the police that then opened up the gates. But let's not talk about the captain who did what he was supposed to do by sending details to particular members to make sure their safety and their staff's safety.
And I want to also add this is that I'm not in any way, shape, or form like the all-knower in terms of understanding like intelligence and how law enforcement moves. But one of the criticisms or one of the things that people are saying is that why aren't they using more force? Like, why aren't they shooting people? Why aren't they beating up people? It was the irony is that there was like a Black Lives Matter melee in LA. It was like a scuffle between anti-Black Lives Matter and the police were on them like white on rice, scrapping and everything. And I said the only time that I know of where the force is not as aggressive is when there is knowledge that the people that are considered the quote unquote antagonists, there are actually people in there that are on the other side, if you know what I'm saying, right? So there is a known knowledge that there are informants in there, or there are law enforcement that are plainclothes cops or in the inside, right? That's one thing. The second thing that they do have to do, which Sharice, you pointed out, there really needs to be a thorough investigation of all of the people who took selfies, let barricades in, watch people scaffold the building like it was the border wall. You know what I'm saying? Like all of it thoroughly, and they need to be fired. Unfortunately, I won't be surprised if most of these people walk away with pensions. But my major concern is, and Angela Rye said it too as well. And I said we're on the same page, maybe for once. Is that is that what does this look like in terms of from an international perspective? Mm-hmm. And all of these people that Trump, all of these countries that Trump has shafted and shaded, and seeing how easy it is to get access to grounds that are considered high security grounds. I am very concerned about that. We haven't even talked about that. I know that of course the next administration has got to do serious scrubbing and reorganizing. But I guess that's why we have America's top cop in here. That's my little side shade right there. But let's go on. Okay, so what does this say about the temperature of the United States and how we are going to move forward? What does this say? Like, where are we? Did you do a temperature check and see exactly where we are and how we're going to move forward?
We in the same place we always been. Like, that's the thing that like kills me when people are like, how do we? We've been in this place. The difference is that now y'all been taking your shit to the outhouse, and now the outhouse is in the house. So now what you gonna do with it? That's all this is. And so how do we move forward? We have to get white people to understand that they've been told a myth about themselves. And because they've been told this myth about themselves, we have to reorient them. And this is where I feel like, and I know, Kaya, you're going to hate me saying this, but this is why we have to provide some level of political cover for people like Joe Manchin, for people like Amy Klobuchar in some of these places where they, like, for instance, in West Virginia, Joe Manchin is a Democrat, but Trump won that state by double digits, right? So if we have to find a way to provide some level of political cover for these middle of the ground folks, because I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, Republican or Democrat. What I don't want is Mitch McConnell and the likes of those type of people that have control of power. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying I'm okay with racism light. What I'm saying is that I have to let you know that racism is not okay. And since it's not okay, this is what I'm willing to bargain on. I'm not willing to bargain on my humanity, but I may be able to bargain on this jobs bill, or I may be able to bargain on this, but my humanity, I'm not going to bargain with. And I feel like you have a better chance of having that conversation with middle of the road ideological people, whether on the right side or on the left side, than with these crazy sycophants that are following after Trump and who believe the myth of their superiority.
Mm. That leads me to the next question is that how do non-white communities, how do we navigate this when white people are going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? Like what are we going to do? I mean, we already, the sentiment is already, you bring your ass to Oakland, you come to Compton, you know what's going to happen. But in general, when we're talking about like incidents in the Capitol, like what are we as non-white communities and white communities who are totally about it, right, with us? How do we handle that? Because I heard something, it just, I forgot who said it, but on the news last night, it said, well, America has just got to get comfortable with the fact that there's going to be a faction of people who are not happy about America. I'm like, what? There's always been factions of people who've been not happy in America because white people are saying that they're not happy with America. Now we got to get comfortable with it.
Kaya, this is what you want to know what to do? What we did the other night. I'm in the hood. I'm in Southeast. I'm on the backside of the Capitol. I heard all the commotion because I'm literally on the backside of the Capitol in the hood in Southeast on Pennsylvania Street.
What up, Southeast DC?
Yeah. They turned the corner down here around this apartment complex. Niggas was outside like, you sure this is what you want to do? I think the Capitol's that way. I think you want to go the other way. Okay?
I'm back.
I don't think that you want to come off in here. Okay? I think you might want to go the other way. Okay? So, because the police ain't coming to come get you from over here anytime soon. They ain't going to come to save you. They're going to hear gunshots, wait 15 minutes, and then bring their behinds on out here. So you might want to turn the other way. So I say that in jokingly in jest, but I say that in a level of seriousness. What do we have to do? We have to take this moment and understand while they acting crazy and going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, we need to be pushing legislation. We need to be pushing opportunities to get capital into our communities. We need to be pushing that Black and brown people are in control of that capital. We need to be pushing the building up of our communities. While they going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and trying to figure out what the American identity is, we already know what the American identity is. We've been new, we've been living in it, and to be honest with you, we built it. So while y'all over there crying over what you didn't build, we're going to continue to build, and we're going to take your money to do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think also I think we need to because for me, I think one of the things that I saw yesterday that made me say, yeah, that's what we need to do. And Tamika Mallory is like, yo, that's not our fight. Don't go out there trying to be Christmas addicts and shit. Like that ain't, you know what I'm saying? That ain't our fight. And I agree with that. And, to Sharice's point, listen, we just need to continue to strategize. We need to continue to be engaged. We need to continue to educate our people. We need to educate our people on basic civics. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm being very, very serious. We need to, if we are not going to be revolutionary like them and go run up in the Capitol, then we need to engage in the process. And we need, because I think a lot of times we think it's an either or thing. We think it's either a Kaya or we think it's a Kamala. We need both. We need people on the inside and we need disruptors on the outside, because that's the only way that we're both going to move the way that we need to move. Right. And I think that's something that we all need to reconcile first, because I feel like there's these big separations of, well, you on the inside and you're on the outside. But I'm like, no, we need the inside and the outside, because we need to move together in order to really push this agenda. I think we're at a place where we know they can't put the toothpaste back in the bottle when it comes to racism. It's out there. It's been seen because we've been stuck in the house with COVID, and that George Floyd thing happened while people couldn't run away from it, couldn't escape from it. It brought out a lot of things that people have been hiding and sweeping under the rugs that we've known about America forever. And I think because of that, we need to take advantage of this moment and make sure we are doing the things we need to do to continue to push our agenda, push our legislation, and build those coalitions in our cities and our neighborhoods to make our cities, neighborhoods better, and to push our representatives.
But Dame, let's also remember this inside-outside thing is a throwback from slavery. And it frustrates the world out of me, because I'm like, y'all, they're using the same psychological game. Are we still falling for the same psychological game? I don't have to agree with Kaya. She don't got to agree with me, but we are in this together.
Absolutely.
Because when both of our Black behinds get pulled over, they don't care who on the inside and who on the outside. You're Black and it's over. So my thing is that we cannot continue to subscribe to this idea that because you're on the inside, you're better, and because I'm on the outside, I'm bad. It's none of that. It's about position. Absolutely. It's about positionality. Who has what position, and what role does your position require you to play?
I think, and added to that, these are some excellent points. We with all of that, we still need to set up a serious system of accountability. That's, I think, where we're lacking the most is that you can't anymore go out and do whatever you want to do, and it be all right, or it's not properly handled in the Black community. I have one more question, because I know you've got to go. This has been an excellent talk. We got to do a part 2. This is like fire, as my homeboy from North Carolina say, this is fish dookie hot. Okay. I don't know what the hell that meant, but anyway, last question. All right. So Biden administration, or the incoming Biden administration, says that he's going to call for masks, mandatory masks, for at least the first 100 days with what we just experienced. Is that realistic? And because COVID-19 is hitting Black and brown communities the hardest, what do we need to do in order to ensure that the numbers don't go up the way that they have been?
Y'all not gonna want to hear what I got to say, but we need to have a real conversation in our communities about this vaccination. Mm-hmm. We have to have a real conversation about it. And my thing is, where I'm frustrated, I'm not upset with anybody who decides not to take it. That's your personal business. That's not where I am. Mm-hmm. Where I am on it is that Black people invented this damn vaccine.
But
There
that
were
doesn't
Black
make it
hands
more
involved.
legitimate. That doesn't make it more legitimate because they created a vaccine.
No, I'm not saying it becomes more legitimate. I'm saying that when you're comparing it to syphilis and other situations, there were no Black voices in the room. There weren't us there to represent. There was no level of representation. I'm not saying it makes it more legitimate. I'm saying that the process has changed, and we have to have a deeper conversation about that so that we can have a conversation in our communities about the level of mistrust. The mistrust is not unwarranted. It definitely is warranted. What I'm saying though is that we have more of us at the table now. We have more of us that are making these decisions. We have more of us that are participating in the process to then protect our lives. And what we are also seeing is we are dying at double the rates. And in places like Louisiana, where I teach, places are already starting to get vaccinations. And because Black communities down there said that they don't want it, they've skipped over Black communities altogether. We're already seeing it. So for me, we have to have a serious conversation in our communities about about the vaccine. What does that mean, whether you take it or not? And then if you're not going to take it, then what are you going to be committed to seriously about not spreading the disease or spreading the virus more than just wearing a mask? Because if you're not going to take the vaccination, that is your personal business, and I'm not shaming anybody for doing so. But what are you then going to do to make it so that you're not carrying that virus to other people in the community that don't have the same level of choices that you do?
That's a whole other conversation we're going to have because, so let's talk about this. The Moderna vaccine, I can talk about all this. The Moderna vaccine, which is funded by the Bill Gates Foundation, let's talk about in terms of who's giving it and this accountability. The paid Nigerian politicians in order to mandate the vaccine in Nigeria. So there is a history of putting a Black face to something. And even in India is talking about, they use Bollywood actors to promote a vaccine that was being tested on Black and brown people. So one, the level of mistrust is not only warranted historically, it is within current day. And then two, there still is not enough science that guarantees that the vaccine is effective and the side effects. All of the side effects and also the medical, there's a lot of people that don't want to come out and talk about their concerns about it because they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to sound cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And let's be honest, a vaccine is not going to cure the wealth gap. It's not going to cure police brutality. It's not going to cure all these other things and symptoms and issues that we had in the community prior to. So in these but I'm not saying vaccines are as old. They're older than white civilizations. White people didn't invent vaccines. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's a very African thing, right? And there is a way to make your immune system tougher and higher through a series of exposure and keeping your body healthy. 100% agree. Unfortunately, when you're in a capitalistic society and it's about money, the question is this really about protecting lives or is this really about a payola? Which still hasn't been answered.
Well, for me, I think it's about both, because when you say it's about money, you also have to look at the fact that this virus has shut down the economy. And that's, if you're going to talk about a capitalistic society about money, that's one thing that differs in this with all, like the doctor said, with all the other conspiracy theories is this time it's hurting money. And when Black and brown people aren't working, that's hurting the bottom line for the rich folks. Right. And also, to me, I've been talking to Black doctors and nurses more than anything about the vaccine, specifically because I know they've been getting more information than us, because they are the ones who are going to have to take it first. They're going to be the frontliners that have to take it. So for me, I don't shame anybody who said they're not going to take it. I don't shame anybody who say they are. I just say, get all the information that you need to do the best for you and your family. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm still gathering information. I'm still trying to get the gist of what's going on, how things were tested, what the side effects are. And that's because, in 2005, I had Bell's palsy. So that means I'm susceptible to get it, if I get the vaccine. So that's something that I worry about. But then on the flip side, I don't want my parents to have to be in the house for a whole another year. Like my mom and dad literally came out of the house probably like 3 times since the virus, has happened. Like me and my brothers, we take them food. We take them food and take them to do everything they do and run their errands and their doctor's appointments and all of that. But I think it's bigger picture for me and bigger picture for us in regards to, like we said, this affects Black and brown people at a rate that it doesn't affect anybody else. And because of our status in the world on a poverty level, I do think that we will get the correct vaccine, unlike, the Tuskegee experiment. I think we will get the real vaccine because they need us working. They need us back in the workplace.
And let's be clear, they test us because Black women have the Eve gene. Right. So it's not by accident that they come in to test us, or they know that we are the heart of civilization. We are the heart of humanity. We Black women are it. I mean, if you believe in Adam and Eve, or if you believe in the first people, they were Black. Like, so I'm not saying it makes it right to test us without our knowledge. I'm saying that it makes perfect sense that they want to test us, right? They want to test us because it's been proven, right? The human genome the human genome and the sequencing of the human genome has been completed. We know scientifically where the first person comes from, and it's from a Black woman. So it makes perfect sense to me that then you want to test on where real humanity lies. Everything else is a dilution of us. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying that it makes logical sense, and it makes sense as to why historically they did surgeries on us and they did all of these things, right? I'll give you an example. I have a condition called hemihypertrophy. I have a condition called hemihypertrophy, and it's the duplication of cells in the body faster on one side of the body. So much so that I've been asked several times for them to use me in cancer trials or cancer studies because of the duplication of my cells, and it only happens on one side of my body, right? So my left kidney is larger than my right kidney. My left side of my brain is bigger than my right side of my brain, right? Wow. You can see it physically a lot in my extremities, in my arms primarily, and in my legs. When I was younger, they were very, very nervous about my small and large intestine, if they were going to grow opposite or etc. So they know when it comes to testing stuff where their bread is buttered. And to Dane's point, they are in a frenzy to get the economy opened back up again, which is why we also see this level of sycophants running up the Capitol, because most of them have been out of work and have been out of jobs, right? And they're out of jobs that they feel like they deserve and that Black and brown people shouldn't have. So that feeds into this fervor of this foolish nationalism that they swear by.
Okay, so this has been really good. I want to come back and say, but when y'all get the vaccine, holla at me. Let me know how it goes. I want to hear all the reports. I'll be writing them down. Me and my bag of herbs over there in the corner. Hello. But I think one of the biggest issues is they researching on us. That to me is always a big issue is that they hold the database, they hold the samples, they hold the Eve gene, they hold the, what's the sister, the Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta Lacks, excuse me. We need to get Harriet Washington, who wrote this book called Medical Apartheid, to see exactly what she says about vaccines to the table, because I definitely am not astute in terms of it. But with that being said, we have a lot of work to do in 2021. We're opening it with a fire-ass weekly check-in. The last thoughts go to both of y'all. I will let the sister go first, Sharice, and then Dan, you wrap it up.
I guess what I am starting out with, or what this year has brought to me, is your exact point, Kaya, that we have to control the research, right? So I'm working at Southern right now so that we can get, they have a center that they've been trying to get up and running for a long time, that I'm working on them with diligently, of trying to get this research center so that we have that control. so that we have that control over the data, that we have the control over the opinions, that we have the control over how the methodology and how we go about collecting the data, all of those things. And so that's what I think I want to close out with, is that this is the moment that we need to figure out, how do we support Black researchers? How do we support Black civic organizations that are on the ground doing this work? And how do we, everything's not going to be perfect. So how do we look past parts of the BS, part of the bureaucracy, to come together as a community to say, you do the research, you do the protesting, this person does the legislation, so that we can get to what true liberation should look like.
All right. Dang.
Well, first, I want to send a shout out to the both of you, because I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with two of you. It's been very enlightening. You two are awesome and amazing. So I want to make sure I give y'all
He has
props.
daughters. He has daughters. He's learning.
For real. I want to make sure I give props to you guys for that, because this is amazing to see and amazing to watch. But also, stay focused. My final thought is, let's stay focused. Like, all the stuff going on at the Capitol, let them have that. Let them eat each other. That's not us. It's not our fight. We know what our fight is, and we know what our fight needs to be and what our fight needs to stay. So we need to stay focused, and we need to continue to educate each other. And us who are educated, let's do a better job of not looking down on those who aren't educated, and try to bring them in the fold, and try to have a little more grace and a little more patience to help them understand what's going on, because we all need each other. We are all people in rooms trying to make it and survive. So that's my final thoughts.
Hella dope. Well, according to Baba Todd, who is our resident spiritualist, he's an AME pastor and a Babalawo. He says this year is the year of Oshun, which in the Yoruba pantheon is creativity, energy, shmoney, fertility, love. But there's an other side of Oshun. If you mess with her, she'll give you a sword with some honey on it and let you lick it till you bleed to death. So, ladies, let's get busy. Brothers, let's get busy. Have a great 2021. And I'll be talking to y'all soon.
All right.
If you wanna see good news, you don't see on regular TV. From another perspective, something relative to your needs.